If you are just joining us, this is episode 3. We've had 2 prior episodes. Those are on our website. You can find them there. The first episode, we covered what is RCS. The second episode, we covered how could you use RCS. And here we are now in our third episode. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and kick off. This is the ultimate guide to RCS, episode 3. We're going to cover agent submission in this one. Um, just really quickly, what we covered in some of the previous sessions. In session 1, we covered what is RCS, what is RBM. We haven't talked about that in a while. Why is it happening now in the world of text messaging? How you could use it to benefit your business, and then how to go about getting RCS inside your business. And then in session 2, in episode 2, we talked about a lot of different use cases for RBM across different industries, across different applications. And that was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of territory of hypothetical businesses, and maybe something in there might apply to you, or at least get you thinking about how you might apply RCS at your business. Our words of advice: start the agent registration process now. It takes 8 to 10 weeks to get approved. So if you start the process now, in 2.5 months, 3 months, you will have your registered agent, and then you can either activate on it or you can sit on it until you're ready to launch this in your business. Our other piece of advice here is to plan for your creatives. RCS opens up all kinds of creative opportunities in the text messaging inbox. So start thinking about different ways you can use those creative elements to further your business along. And then from an analytics perspective, all new analytics for the text messaging channel, all kinds of exciting analytics that you'll be able to use and measure the success of your channel. So that's what we covered previously. That's all on the website. Feel free to grab it there. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Amanda McGuckin-Hager. I am the CMO and CRO here at True Dialogue. I've got our VP of Customer Success, Becky Banasic, here. And I have our product marketing lead, Sarah Haynes, joining us as well.
Afternoon. I guess I should say good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Exactly.
depending on when you watch.
Where you are. So we're going to talk today, as Amanda said, about how you're going to get started with your first agent. So this has been the mapping we've talked about in all of these sessions before, and so we've talked a lot about the creative, as she mentioned later, and thinking about the analytics. And now we're going to go all the way back to registering your first agent and walk you through some of the process for that. And I think our perspective in this, we'll try to talk about it both ways, right? There may be some of you who are leapfrogging directly into RCS and have not gone through a submission process before for a longer short code. So we'll talk about it from that perspective. But I'll be honest, for those of you who have been through it before, this also is, there's a lot of the same type of information. So we may talk about the things then that are similar and what's going to be new and what you should be thinking about that's going to feel a little different, especially if it's been a little while since you've had to get something approved. So we'll start just with the screen that has the least amount of words or images, which is, as we're thinking about this, we've talked about these last 2 sessions that, hey, for those of you who missed, are talking about an agent. An agent is your brand or the equivalent of what might be a code in previous worlds. So it's your brand, it's your brand plus a use case. We'll talk about that a few times here. But because this is a different structure, one of the things that we would say is, as you're getting started, we'll talk about some ways in which you may want to think through and have a conversation about your strategy, about how you're getting started, because that will definitely advise the approach that you take for submission. And again, because some of these things are different, you may want to talk through how you're going to do this, how you want to split up into different agents, and who's responsible for what. And this just gives you an opportunity to think about it ahead of time. in
Hmm.
part because some of the images and things that you're doing, it's not like it's hard, but it actually is a bit of a resubmission if you're making changes to the use case, to your logo, to your banner.
Yeah.
So knowing it ahead of time is just creating less work in the long term.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Sarah.
it's a little bit of a different way of thinking, right? Because of course, there's also your RCS message strategy,
Hmm.
something we talked about in the last session. But this is the agent strategy, which kind of comes way back at the beginning, almost before the beginning. And I think that's just a little bit of a different way of thinking about RCS.
Yeah. And the just to remind everyone, if you haven't started texting yet, you normally send text messages through a long code, which is also called a 10 DLC, 10-digit long code. That is looks and feels like every phone number you've ever known with an area code and 7 digits. Or you send through a short code, which is a 5 or 6 digit number. An RCS agent is the way you send RCS messages, and it's not a phone number. That is the hardest thing to wrap your head around, at
Mhm.
least for me. It is not a phone number. It is an RCS agent that sends the messaging through. So, talking about agent strategy session, I'll use the example that I know and that I know well. I get my prescriptions filled at Walgreens, and Walgreens sends me prescription updates, transactional messages on the status of my prescription through their RCS agent, which is called Walgreens RX. I don't get any communications through that agent on sales that they might be having or new products that they're now featuring or um, any loyalty type of communications. It is literally just messages pertaining to my prescription and prescription status. So, when we talk about your RCS agent strategy session, we recommend going to whoever is your RCS provider and having a strategy session to sort of kick off your exploration here, right? So, you may have 50 different locations in your business, and you may decide that you want an RCS agent for every location, or you may have different business units, different business lines, or different brands within your business that might want an RCS agent. Or like Walgreens, you may have different use cases that might want RCS agents. But I think it will become clear as we get into this that Sarah, I think you mentioned one agent can only serve one purpose. It
Yeah.
cannot serve multiple purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another reason for the strategy session.
And I think it's interesting. In some ways, it seems obvious that if you've been using SMS, that you're just going to move to RCS. But in some ways, I think that's a bigger mental shift than if you have not been using this type of messaging and you're going to leapfrog all the way to RCS and understand it kind of fresh. I actually think that might be easier. So
Yeah,
both things are certainly possible, but
yeah.
yeah,
I think RCS will open the door for a lot of people that aren't texting yet.
exactly,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and I hope it does because it's really, I think, super cool.
I just had this thought of like, hey, are we going to get to a point where it's like, is it our grandkids at this point, not our kids who like what is a phone number? Um, I know we're far
Maybe
away.
like what is a
That's
landline?
a great, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
That dialer.
So, we've for those of you who've been with us across the couple of sessions, this is something you've seen as well before. So, just as a quick reminder, or covering this for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is the process that we're going to talk through. So, the brand verification again, because this is not just a verification that, hey, you're a legit business using this for a legit reason. This is truly vetting your brand. That is what is going to allow you to have this check mark that you've seen in a lot of our imagery that this is you are a verified brand. You can imagine in this world that is very valuable in terms of credibility. It is also valuable in terms of having this type of imagery where you're standing out, at least for now, amongst the rest of the messages that are coming in for people in their messaging app. And again, this is where you're going to now have the ability to put a logo. So you got to pick which logo you want. You're picking your background colors. There's a description, there's a banner, and all of this is actually verified back to your domain and back to the human who is the owner of that particular agent. Uh, we
And
also, for those of you, oh, go ahead.
I think you're making a great point, Becky, that there is a window of opportunity where you're going to be the message with the brand, and a lot of other folks aren't going to be. Over
Mhm.
time, everybody's going to have their brand, and it would be table stakes to not to not have your brand would be a problem. But right now, it's actually a standing out opportunity as well.
Absolutely, 100%. If you think of your phone and the messages inbox, right? There you may have pictures on your contact cards, right? Of people you've known or people that are in your address book, but every other message comes without much in that circle to the left. This is an opportunity to put your brand in there and really pop, as you mentioned. And I'll just, if I could just step back and say, one of the value propositions of RCS is the ability to send as a verified sender. So this is new and different from text messaging if you're doing that today. I think we've all talked about some, the spoofing and the smishing emails that we get. I'm sure that there are brands that are being impersonated by bad actors. And what this RCS verified agent allows for, excuse me, is none of that.
Yeah, being able to say to your customers, you will never receive a message from us that is not branded with our brand and our verification. And anything else is not going to be us. And being able to say that, that's pretty amazing.
And to keep that clean, right? And to keep tight reins around that, there is a rather strict approval process,
Yeah.
right? In order to make sure that the RCS verified sender stays as a clean channel, that RCS is remains to and continues to be a very powerful engagement channel. The application process is, I won't say steep, but it is maybe a little bit more than you would have to do for other registrations. Would you agree?
A lot of steps.
A lot
A
of
lot of stuff.
steps.
It also, again, there's a difference between applying as a company and applying as a brand. So, for those of you who may have different brands, it's not just about different use cases, which is part of it, but also if you have different brands, all of those have their own, would get their own agent as well. Again, kind of back to the strategy. I know we work with a lot of folks who have an umbrella company, but multiple brands underneath it. And so
Mhm.
part of that's part of that strategy as well as how you're going to get started. Can you start with that umbrella brand and then you start to branch out? But as we talk about different reasons why you're going to have multiple RCS agents, that is another reason why that may be the case.
Right. And I'll just reiterate, I know we've said it in the previous sessions, an agent is your brand plus your use case. If your brand is
Mhm.
different or your use case is different, it's another agent. And it's fine to have multiple if that's appropriate for your business.
Yeah. So the step one is to gather the documents, right? And to provide your identification in your logo and your background. And then what happens?
Well, let's start to take a look in more detail that walks you through each of these steps, right? So you can kind of see we've got an example here of a UI approach to being able to register your agent. So we're first talking about step one up at the top left, which is again getting your agent details. Again, this is something that's very different for those of you who've done submissions before. And this is probably the biggest difference, which is, hey, there's a logo and banner requirements that you are going to want to say. So you have your agent's name and description. That agent name, just like Amanda said earlier about Walgreens, doesn't just need to be your brand. Walgreens RX is a great example. Perhaps I'm a Longhorn, so UT admissions, as is Amanda, may be different than UT alumni or something like that. So
Or
your
UT
agent name could just be
athletics?
your brand, athletics, yeah. It could be just your brand, but it may be a bit of your brand plus, as Sarah was saying, your use case from the beginning, and that really leaves naming open for other agents that you're going to do that are kind of within the same overall organization.
And
Uh,
that's why we started with that. Think about your strategy before you start uploading
Yeah.
uploading
Yeah.
logos. Yeah,
Have a strategy
have a
session so that you
strategy.
have this ready to go.
Yeah.
At least you've given some thought to how you want to approach your RCS agents.
And again, I
And,
mentioned this before. Again, it's not crazy, but you will have to go through a smaller process if you decide, hey, 6 months in, you've rebranded, you've got a new logo, or you want to change the logo. It is another submission. It's just a smaller part of the steps of submission. And while the original submission right now is about 8 to 10 weeks, this should not be as long. We don't have a lot of at-bats yet to say what that shorter time frame is to actually change out the banner, but just something to be aware of.
and I will say the screens you're seeing here, every RCS provider is going to have a slightly different process. The screens you're seeing here are ours. But the
That's true.
requirements that we're talking about here, from the items that you need to upload to the dimensions, format, size, those are standard across the industry. So just to kind of have context on what you're seeing, most of this is actually being dictated by that approval process with Google and the carriers.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. In our platform, we built an automated 10DLC registration process for 10-digit long code approvals. We did the same thing here with the RCS agent, built this automated RCS agent application into the platform. So you are seeing that's a screenshot from our platform. I wanted to talk about the banners for just a minute. I know that when we were talking about this webinar, I got really excited and was like, wow, think of all the things you could do with the banners. Like this is the Ospreys basketball team. Let's just hypothetically say the basketball team is making it to the March Madness season. Let's hypothetically think that they get down to the finals. And then let's hypothetically say that they win the championship. Imagine all the opportunities on this banner to promote that, right? The March Madness season, to promote the playoffs, and then to finally promote the winning of the championship. However, I think we'll get into this in a little bit. Every banner change or every creative change of that banner requires to go back to the submission process. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And there
But
there may also be a small fee
yeah.
associated with that.
But keep in mind, every RCS message you have is chock full of visuals. So it
Mhm.
may be that some of those things are coordinated to look great with your banner, but be that kind of subline under your banner that's a visual on a carousel instead.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Keeping the banner consistent and putting that promotion in the message itself.
And I'll say one last practical thing for those of you out there, like a lot of the folks that I work with. If you are not part of your marketing team, I would say these are pretty standard dimensions in terms of what they're saying. So far, I think these are all things for those people who I've talked to that their marketing team had readily on hand. So it wasn't necessarily more work to create or to do something, but just to be aware that it's typically been a quick just message to send me what images it looks like and get that from the right team. So that has not, I think, a huge barrier.
And I do want to briefly hit a question here, because I'm sure this is maybe what other people are wondering. Can anyone help us make sure we get accepted for the application for RCS, is the question. And absolutely, yes. Certainly, I don't think you'd want to go down an RCS path with a vendor that hasn't already learned how to apply and get accepted for short codes and 10DLC, right? This is the same very similar process, working with the carriers, understanding their rules, understanding their process, as well as now going down this RCS path. So yeah, absolutely. Any vendor who has experience in this case, both with SMS and with RCS, is going to be able to partner with you all the way through to make sure that that happens.
And hopefully they are good partners, right? We've talked to a lot of prospects that don't always have that hand-holding experience provided by potential vendors out there in the world. So yeah, I think as we all go through this as an industry, as we go through this in our businesses, it is important to choose someone that will help you and truly partner with you on this process.
Excellent. So a little bit more here about,
Oh.
again, this part should seem very familiar again with those of you who have submitted before. So the last part of those agent details, again, we talked about the part that's new. The stuff that's about the same is, hey, yes, you've got to have your website, contact information. Again, we'll get back to whoever you're using as your contact person. But this still requires a privacy policy and terms and conditions that are going to fit that approval process. When Amanda just talked about who you're partnering with to work with on
Mhm.
this, I will caution and say, hey, these things do change over time, even for 10DLC and short code. And so if you have not had to submit something recently these things have updated and changed. So it is one of those things that you want to be ready in case you're required to make any updates to what is the most recent piece that we can advise around what your privacy policy needs to state and what your T's and C's need to state for this. I don't think, again, that it's anything that's radically different if you've gone through submission for everything else. It's just that everybody's submission criteria have gotten stricter over time.
Mhm. Yeah. We talked about this as like code, right? Like housing code.
Mhm.
I know I've done a remodel. I think Sarah, you mentioned you built
Oh, yes.
a house. Becky,
It,
I
it,
think you
it's
also
it's a
have the
My
remodel,
husband,
experience.
which is
my
always
husband's a
worst.
carpenter. We deal with this stuff all the time,
Oh yeah, that's right.
getting
Like day in and day out. So
Mhm.
like I bought an older house and when I went to sell it, there were a lot of things that were out of code that had to be brought up to code. And I feel like the privacy policy and the T's and C's in text messaging are very similar, right? Where if you got approved for a 10 DLC number 5 years ago, you may still actually need to make updates to bring your privacy policy and your T's and C's up to date, like up to code. Um, before you can launch your RCS agent. I think for some of our customers that was a little surprising, right? Of like, what do you mean I have to update these? I'm already approved, I'm already sending. Yes, but I can't think of a better analogy than housing code. Like modern code requires modern updates.
Yeah. And you get away with it till somebody looks at it again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Until you go to sell your house and then you have to make all the updates. The other thing I would call out here is this email address. I think you touched on it, Becky, but just to hit it home, that email address that is entered there is going to be the email address that Google proper emails with status updates. So make sure that someone is checking and watching that email address. I
Yeah.
know some companies will do info at or, support at, which is fine, as long as somebody knows that Google's updates might be coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see how that gets applied in a few slides from now.
Mhm.
You'll remember this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of which, that second step then on the top left is the use case. So again, Sarah mentioned we just talked about the brand. Now we're talking about the plus use case. And so while use case as a whole, like agent may have a lot of different meanings, and our last whole webinar was using a lot of examples of things that you could do. The use case in the submission process is a much more specifically designed or defined piece, right? So there's a couple of categories that you can pick from, and some that aren't available yet in the U.S.
Yeah, so this is a good time to point out that conversational, meaning not just yes, I'm confirming this appointment, but a heavy back and forth between an individual agent at a company, like not the brand, but an individual person at the company back and forth with the customer. That type of agent isn't available in North America yet. It's heavily used in Europe already, in other parts
Mhm.
of the world, but not in the US. So the second two, single and basic, what you're really saying here is what are you primarily going to use for it? Is it going to be a two-factor authentication and that's about it? That's pretty basic. Or are you going to be sending mostly carousels and rich media and so forth, in which case that would be single message. And that's sort of the primary use. It doesn't prevent you from using it in another way.
Well, I just want to call back basic. In our last webinar, we talked about what basic is. It's basic. it's basically basic is basic
basically.
is rich media.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's a rich message. I'm sorry, it's not rich media, it's a rich message. So it's your verified sender, your verified agent, and a plain text with maybe a URL. You are still limited to the 160 characters. It's a pretty flat message. The advantage of basic is that you get the verified sender. So if it's
Yeah.
great for one-time passwords, for 2FA, for other transactional notifications like delivery status or different use cases like that. The single message is your rich media. That's where you get to include your images, your videos. You have cards and carousels. You can have call to action buttons. You can have suggested replies. You can have all kinds of things. That's the really exciting one.
So that's your marketing use case
That's the
of very,
marketing use case
yeah,
for sure. Marketing and
yeah,
promotions for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
And then underneath with the use cases, you'll see kind of some broad categories here: promotional, one-time passwords, transactional, multi-use. But then you'll see on the next slide that you have to actually get even more detailed on those use cases.
Right, exactly. So I wanted to say that while we're saying that brand plus use case equals an agent, it does not mean, for instance, that you only get one promotional use case from this drop down per brand to put out there. So it's not the equivalent in that way. Sarah, I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit more.
Just that it's yeah, it doesn't mean that every type of campaign you're going to do is going to need a different agent or something like that. It's truly when the way you're using it is very different. If you've got a marketing agent and one day you're promoting, take a B2B example, one day you're promoting that you're going to be at a conference, and the next day you're promoting a webinar, and the day after that you're promoting a new feature, that's fine. Those are not separate use cases. Those are all that single message, rich media, promotional sales and marketing type of use case. You don't have to continue to get new agents for that kind of thing.
Right. So for instance, in the Osprey's case, so it's not saying that
Mhm.
you only get to have one promotional use case
Not at
per
all.
brand that we're doing is basically what I'm saying. So you may have an
Yeah,
Osprey's that is the Osprey's ticket sales that is still a kind of marketing sales promotional piece that you want to have branded in that way. You also could have an Osprey's promotional that is a game day oriented one that would still fit in that use
absolutely.
case category. But is still, used under the same brand, but those are two different agents using this use case more than once, plus the brand, but the purpose of what you're sending is different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does not force that level of granularity. And keep in mind, there's a multi-use option here as well. So
I
this
was
is
going to say, I want to ask you ladies about the multi-use then, because that just seems to me like the catch-all, like that's probably the best one for,
yeah,
uh,
I mean, I would definitely encourage you if you're using it for something like two-factor authentication, one-time passwords, that's pretty narrow. And I think being precise there is worthwhile. You don't really want to come back and use that agent to then promote your sale. Not
right,
probably good
right. You
practice,
don't want to
right?
mix those two use
Yeah.
cases.
I
Yeah,
think that's where we really see the distinction.
And I also
yeah.
think your Walgreens RX example is very transactional and very specific.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know that as well. So, the more that you can be specific, I'm sure that actually helps with the process.
Well, and keep in mind your opt-in rules, right? Amanda's opting into her Walgreens prescription because she needs to know to go pick up her prescription. She may
Right.
not want promotional material from Walgreens, so they need to be able to say, "Can we send you this?" And I think that's kind of an important factor as well.
That is an important factor. Yeah, I probably would opt out of the promotions, but like you said, I need the prescription status updates, to live my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. So next step in our process is the agent experience. And so this is, as Sarah said, where you start to get into more of the specifics of what you're doing. And again, The majority of this is still very similar to what you would have submitted for your 10DLC or long code and short code. So this isn't necessarily particularly new, but it's reiterating this for this different purpose.
And probably the one thing I'd want to point out here is that consent information. So this is another place like your terms of service and so forth, where you need to make it really clear that you have an appropriate consent strategy and that you can prove that you have that.
Yep. And then reiterating the piece that we've talked about a couple of times, which is the brand content. So the contact is the person who will be having to do your verification. So this is one of the parts that is different, again, because your brand is getting verified. That this not just will you won't just get updates, but there will be a step to verify as you get close to the end of the process. And so as Amanda was saying earlier, even if your contact email may be something that is more general, you are required to have a name of somebody who is the person who's responsible for this in a title to get through this process.
Yeah. So yeah, all the more reason for the strategy session, I think. I see these questions and knowing that this is an automated application, knowing that the application process takes a long time, you don't want to go through this and then get rejected, 3 months down the line. So having a good idea of how to answer these is going to be important.
Absolutely. And then the last step in terms of, again, getting through a UI version at least of this submission process is just you get to see it all. Doing the review before you submit, you have a chance to look at it and submit that. Again, we'll reiterate that currently it's taking about 8 to 10 weeks to get approval. The carriers will use that contact information if there's any information or changes prior to approval. For instance, Sarah and I have been working closely together as we worked on our RCS launch, and I know that they changed back and forth a few of the requirements even before we launched. There was a time where a letter was necessary on letterhead that may or may not come back into the process. So we're already seeing that some of the things have changed over time, but that may be something that you hear back from of like we need something else. So you want to be ready, and again, as Amanda said earlier, you want to be manning that particular email address so that you're catching those things to respond to it.
And as I think you'll see on the next slide, every carrier is different. What satisfies AT&T may not satisfy T-Mobile. So this is where having that partner in your RCS provider to help you navigate these requests is really important. It can be, it can add delays if there's any surprises. So
Yeah. One thing we didn't touch on is the fallback number. So your agent application is required to have a fallback number. That fallback number is actually a telephone number. It can be the long digit or the short digit, the 10DLC or the short code. But remember, RCS is dependent on the device that it gets sent to, and it's sometimes dependent on the carrier that message gets sent through. So having the fallback number ensures that your RCS message has a fallback of plain text, and that your campaign will still get sent to everyone in your list, regardless of their RCS status. So the way I think about it is in email, every email has a plain text created. Every HTML email that is created has a plain text email. And it's very similar in RCS. The RCS is your HTML email. The SMS fallback is your plain text message, and that requires a phone number. So
And keep in mind so that's relevant in two different places, right? You actually need that SMS fallback number to complete your agent application. And then when you do a campaign in RCS, you will put in a specific message for that campaign that will be used as your SMS fallback message. So if you've got 10 carousels promoting game day, you might just have a link to buy tickets in your SMS message and nothing else.
Yeah, in your fallback.
In your fallback. So you both have to provide the message here, and then in every campaign, you actually say what your message is going to be that is going to be delivered by that SMS fallback number.
Yeah. And I also wanted to call out this screenshot that we see, this Osprey screenshot here. This is actually the Osprey's contact card of the agent. So in your phone, if you look at your contact card for an agent, it has a phone number that can be your support line, that can be whatever number you want it to be. That's part of your application process. This, while this says S. Haynes at True Dialogue, maybe there you do want it to be support at, or some other sort of intake email address. And then of course the website where the people in your list, your receivers, can go for more information. So I just wanted to call that out. This whole application process culminates in that verified sender and that contact card.
I think that's a great point, because we've talked a lot about having your branding on the message when it arrives and having the check mark, but you also get this full contact card. So if somebody's going, is this really them? To be able to back that up all the way to the contact card, see this information, is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does add to that verification. Like you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
And I'll add one last thing about the SMS fallback number, going back to the question of how you're strategizing that. So, for instance, I would say so far, for those who aren't transferring numbers over, for instance, like one of those strategy steps could be, hey, we want to submit and get approval for one long code that we can do really quickly so that we have a number ready before doing the RCS submission. So again, part of that process is do you have a number that's already available, and how can we get you something as quickly as possible?
Great point.
So agent approvals.
Yeah, this is a fun one. This is actually a real world screenshot of what that approval process looks like, and you can see it is carrier by carrier, and they're in different places in the process. And I think what's useful to me about this is to see, why is this, I thought we were done. Go, AT&T asked for something. I thought we were set. Well, there's T-Mobile waiting for something else. So understanding that your RCS partner can help you navigate this process, but ultimately you're looking at approvals carrier by carrier. I think it's just helpful to kind of set that expectation up front. You understand what you're working through.
Yeah, in 10DLC, you go through one registration body, and in shortcode as well, you go through a different registration body, but all the carriers have partnered with that registration body to do one application, one approval across all of them. RCS is different in that it is truly carrier by carrier.
Yeah. And I would remind everyone of what we talked about back in our first webinar, which is just how new adoption is in North America, and how much has gone on behind the scenes to make this possible with so many carriers across North America. And this process may change, it may simplify, who knows? But this is where we are at this early stage that we're all sharing here right now, aren't we?
Yeah. I think one thing to note, let's take this example that we're seeing on screen. Let's say that since the agent is approved in AT&T, C Spire, Google, TracFone, and Verizon, this company could actually take that agent and start sending RCS messages.
Great point.
And everyone in their list that is an AT&T subscriber, C Spire, Google, TracFone, Verizon will receive an RCS message.
Mm-hmm.
Those people on the list that are a T-Mobile subscriber and potentially the US cellular subscriber would receive that SMS fallback.
That's a great point. And if you have a carrier lookup feature as part of your SMS RCS solution, you could go, oh, well, looks like T-Mobile is 8% of our list. We're going to go ahead and move forward pending that final approval, and know that they'll get the fallback. So that's a great point.
Yeah. I just didn't want the audience thinking it's an all or nothing. Everyone has to approve, or I can't do this. That's not actually the case.
Yep. Yeah. Great point.
great reason to have the fallback number.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Um, and again, as we mentioned before, the contact email and person that you've put is going to be the one that's going to receive a final consent, like a validate your submission, which is what's giving the permission for the provider to be a final step. And again, this may come from a company name that you haven't seen before. It may not come from the carrier specifically. So you just want to watch out for anything that is looking specifically for that potential validation. And you should also feel free with whatever company you're working with to get your RCS agent. You can always check for them if you want to check the validity of the email that you were sent before
Great.
going ahead and doing the step, the final step that you need.
Great.
Yeah, this is a good point. You may be working with us or another RCS provider, but this email comes from, I think it comes from maybe Google.
Yeah, it can come from Google or an aggregator, but there can be another company involved that is not who you normally work with. That's a step in this approval process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Could be surprising if you're not prepared.
Yeah. And I think too, watching out, we have not seen this yet, but it's one of those things too that working with somebody who's monitoring this also on your behalf within a portal, to be able to double check and reach out to you and let you know that you should have received it is good. Who knows? I'm assuming it's not the type of thing that's going to go to spam, but it's good to have two sets of eyes and have a partner who's also paying attention to let you know you should be on the lookout for it.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you get that letter, it's the last step, right? You are
Exactly.
yeah,
Ready to
There's
go.
success.
that
That
letter's
means
a good.
it's good news
Yeah.
for sure to be able to get that to get that point. So just as a bit of a reminder, we've covered a lot of this too. But hey, what is sort of the difference between for those of you who have been through this before on the SMS side versus the RCS side? So again, opt-in. Obviously, you still need to have the opt-in process and language that everybody's looking for. Registration model, again, is it on the SMS side is a brand plus a campaign. Whereas, as Sarah's mantra has been on the RCS side, it's a brand plus the declared use case. In terms of the enforcement, I'm sure a lot of you have longer short codes right now that you may have drifted a bit in terms of what you started from your use case, as you wouldn't have to resubmit necessarily to do that. Whereas we're expecting with RCS that use case is much more tightly aligned and monitored. And it's one of the things that you'll expect the partner that you're working with to stay on top of what that looks like, how that's being monitored, what they're seeing in the industry around that use case enforcement. Again, one of the greatest differences from a brand visibility standpoint is moving from a phone number or a code back to that Osprey's example of a brand name and logo with the banner. You saw the card of what that looks like. That has a lot more information. That's one of the biggest differences. We are still the opt-out is a little different again because it's instead of just replying stop, there's also a different way that you may unsubscribe to that. One of the exciting pieces of RCS that we've talked about in previous ones, but not much today, is RCS messages are encrypted. So that may open up a lot of possibilities for some of you out there. In terms of the any of the risk of, hey, is somebody sending something that looks like you can imagine this is a significantly lower risk when you're talking about something that's branded, talking about something that's verified, and talking about something that has a mark for that verification. So again, when you go back to some of those strategy conversations of even, hey, what is that first message? that goes out looks like, and reminding people like, hey, this is what to expect from us, from this agent. Not that we would use the word agent in that case, but this is what to expect from us. So keep an eye out for what we may send to you. And then finally, on the potential protection from a phishing standpoint, again, you'd imagine this is dramatically improved based on the fact that this is verified, which is a word that we've used a lot today because it's an exciting part of the RCS experience for that end user who's getting your message.
Yeah. Speaking as a consumer, I'm really looking forward to those last two.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't get the random like I've used this example before, but there are a lot of people who have experience that can replace my roof. I get a message from them
Oh yeah, you
often.
get the roofing.
I get the roofing messages,
Yeah.
but yes. So I look
I
forward.
get tolls. I get outstanding
Oh,
toll bills.
I get tolls for Texas where I don't live anymore. So yeah.
Yes. And I think I've also used this example, so apologize to those of us who have been in these before. But I also have conditioned my mom to send screenshots if there's anything that she's concerned about, like getting tolls and messages too.
Yep.
So I
Hmm.
expect at some point there will be fewer of those screenshotted messages once there is a verification
Yeah.
that you start to see that's in common across a lot of the different brands that you engage with as a consumer.
And that's that.
I know. Do we
Mhm.
have any other questions before we go ahead and wrap up?
Don't see any
I
others.
didn't see any come in, but um, we can always field questions afterwards if someone's watching the recording, just by emailing marketing at True Dialogue.
Absolutely. And I would say this is kind of the most straightforward, where the rest of the sessions that we've had so far, we're much more focused on getting you excited, getting ideas out there for you. Whereas this is a much more pragmatic, like, what are the steps going to be? What does that look like? And certainly you don't have to remember all this because number one, hopefully you're going to work with a partner. So whether it's with someone like us who does have this in a UI where you can kind of see all those steps, or somebody who's talking you through it. So you don't have to remember
Mhm.
all these things. It's much more about saying, get excited, get prepared, and work with somebody who's going to help you along the way.
And has all that SMS experience to apply to this process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about RCS from as a marketer. I think it's just going to be a game changer. I was having a conversation with a CRO in a security business out of Canada earlier today, and talking about when I started describing RCS, like eyes got big, like wow, that's going to be amazing. So we're just at the
Yep,
beginning of it launching in the market, but I think we'll see it steadily grow over time.
for sure.
Well, excellent. So, as Amanda said earlier, just to wrap things up, and thank you again for joining us, especially those of you, because I know there are some who have come and spent 3 sessions with us. So, we really appreciate those of you who have been following along. The first 2 recordings are already available on our site. This will be up shortly as well. If you're curious what those other sessions were about, the first one we talked much more about kind of that visual composer, a way that you can create the messages and how you start to think about what types of messages you can send. Our second episode was giving as many possible examples with lots of fictitious companies of different, coming from different industries, just to get everybody's juices flowing. So I think across all of that, that's a pretty comprehensive look, but there's so much more to come. And so we're really excited that we're getting to bring this to the market. We're happy on the customer success side for those of you working with us to be able to help you along the way, whether it's your strategy, whether it's how you are going through the submission process, or how you're evolving this over time and how this is really going to impact your business.
So it's fun. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.